This is the June 8th, 2021 work session of the Pinehurst Village Council. It's approximately 7:32 in the evening. The meeting's been called to order. Agenda item number 2 is a report on West Pinehurst Park, an update on that. Comments from the village manager before the
Yeah, I
Parks and
guess I could
Recreation
be the filler
Department
here
comes.
for Mark, because he,
Got some items to
Saunters.
pass out as well.
you know, we did some public engagement on this topic and a bunch of surveys and stuff, and what you're going to see now is some initial draft renderings for thought starters on where we might be going with that park project.
And Mark, as you're passing this out, will you have a copy of this put in Kevin's box, please? Thank you.
Do you have a soft copy to share? Do you have a PowerPoint to go with this that Kevin can see?
Is there one that the
That's okay,
Slater
I'm,
can see?
Kevin, we may not have a PowerPoint here for you to see easily.
I
But,
appreciate you guys allowing me to
This is the
just.
same thing you emailed this afternoon, is it not?
That's correct.
oh, it is on email. That's
Yeah,
right.
well, yes, the one I
Kelly, can
emailed.
I,
Kevin, you probably have an email from Mark Wagner late this afternoon, which has this information in it, if you can access that.
I'm looking at it.
Jeff, do you need?
You have it?
Yep.
Okay, good. Mark, proceed, please.
Jeff, do you have a copy of the maps? I've got an extra
I've
set.
got a copy, thank you.
Okay, all right.
I was just wondering if it might be helpful to get it up on the screen, but.
Maybe
Yeah.
pull it up.
Go ahead, Mark.
Okay, all right. Well, like we mentioned, we have been doing some public input as it relates to West Pinehurst Community Park. Just a little background, that is a 74-acre park now. It was 67 acres when the village purchased it back in 2001. So we've had it for almost 20 years now, with just minimal development on the site, to include a gravel parking lot and the disc golf course that's out there now. In terms of the public input, our consultants, McAdams Company, we had 2 virtual public input meetings on May 4th, one in the morning, one in the evening. Between those 2 meetings, we had 28 individuals who participated in those meetings, not counting staff and consultants. The first item that was on top of the stack that I gave you with the kind of purple headers, that's a kind of a synopsis of the comments, the general themes that we got from those meetings. Participation in those meetings was via Zoom, and we also used some poll questions via an app that's called Mentimeter. As I'm sure Jane will fondly remember, our exercise trying to get that to work in one of the meetings. And we also had a whiteboard where participants could do like an online sticky note and drag onto the field to show where we might want to see activities there. Basically, the attendees were able to, type in their desired amenities and features into those sticky notes, put them on the board, and from that, the consultants gleaned what were the top 5 most desired amenities for the park. The first one being a skate park. Number 2 was nature-related amenities and features. A playground was number 3. A dog park was number 4. Mountain bike trails was number 5. In terms of the community or the participants that were in those meetings, we tried to gather some information from participants, where they lived, what their age, demographics, things like that. The majority of the attendees reported that they did live in the village, but we did also have people from Southern Pines, Carthage, Aberdeen, and other towns within Moore County. Now, the 28 people and the percentage that were Pinehurst residents, you're basically working off faith that they're being honest with that. So I just wanted to mention that it's not a statistically valid survey. So, okay. We did also do a separate survey that went out via social media, the Pinehurst Public Engagement page, and we had 790 respondents to that survey. So we were very happy with the number of responses that we got. That survey was open for 2 weeks from May 4th to May 17th. And we wanted to, again, try to get an idea of where people lived. And of the 772 responses, 546 indicated that they lived within the village of Pinehurst. 226 reported themselves as being non-residents. In terms of the preferences, I'm going to skip over what's in the attachment in terms of where they lived, but the preferences that we got from that survey, most of those respondents said that they had been to the park, and those who had been to the park most frequently were walking, playing disc golf, or walking their dogs. And also there was a lot of folks who came out with photography. They had an interest in taking nature photos out there. And I think Jane can attest, because I know she made a comment about it, and a couple other attendees did too. There's a little bit of a concern about the loss of nature on that property if we were to develop it. There was a concern in those meetings from some attendees that there would be a loss of that kind of quiet, natural space if it was developed. In terms of, basically the results and conclusions that we could take from there, the consultants feel that there's a strong desire and hunger for more natural education and immersion on the site. It's also understood from the survey that the community would like to expand recreational opportunities by means of a skate park, additional playgrounds, water play, space for community events, and innovative outdoor recreation facilities like a zip line, a canopy walk, tree houses. So the notable conclusions, according to the consultants that we have, is there's an overwhelming concern that the sense of place, as I mentioned earlier, would be disruptive if active recreation facilities, such as a skate park or athletic fields, are developed. There was a strong desire to take advantage of the natural beauty of the existing park conditions, but there was significant interest in having a skate park. And I'll stop for just a second to talk about skate park, because as you can see from the rendering that's up on the screen, there is not a skate park that the consultants have included. I think at this point, the question is, how comfortable is staff and council and management in proposing that type of amenity out on that property? If that is truly an amenity that we want to provide for our community, maybe that's not the right place for it. And I think that's something we'd like to talk about. I think within the village, we have other options. We have an inline hockey rink here in Wicker Park. Could we create a skate park, a bowl off of that facility that maybe they tie in together? Do we look at the area north of the tennis courts in Wicker Park, where we already have some natural terrain that drops off? Could you do something there? The other thing that I mentioned to Jeff was the Tri-Cities group has been talking about opportunities for towns and villages to collaborate. Maybe the skate park is an opportunity for that. Did you get the first part, Jane? I'm sorry.
I'm having a hard time hearing.
Okay, I'm sorry. The Tri-Cities group has been talking about opportunities for the towns to collaborate, and I think that the skate park might be something that is worth consideration. I have a location in mind. Are you okay with me mentioning that? Okay. Martin Park, which is Town of Southern Pines property. They have a dog park. They have significant acreage out there just behind Walmart. It abuts all three towns, and that might be a location that is worth exploring for a skate park. Maybe Southern Pines donates the land, and the other towns in the county chip in some funds to build a skate park, and we help maintain it through some sort of cost share agreement. So that would be what my initial kind of recommendation would be, that might be the best place, because the interest in a skate park is all throughout the county. It's not just in Pinehurst. It's not just in Aberdeen or Southern Pines. So I think that's something that bears consideration, and whether that's something Jeff can take to the Tri-Cities group or one of the other managers, we would be happy to talk about that. So
How much space does a skate park take?
it depends, really. You can make them whatever size you want. There's one in Fayetteville that I believe is a half acre. Apex has an acre. So,
That much?
yeah, it's not.
My predecessor at Fort Bragg built one there. Fort Bragg's pretty considerably sized community, but I don't think that was more than a couple of tenths of an acre.
Okay, well, so it's not 5 acres, okay.
Yeah, and depends on what the development standards are, how many parking spaces are you going to have to provide for that. So that's something that would have to be looked at as well. But very nice facilities in Apex and Fayetteville that I looked at online after the meetings. Some of the respondents provided some examples for us to look at. And like I said, half acre to an acre, and you've got a nice, a nice place, I think, for people to go. If we wanted to do something in Wicker Park south of the inline hockey rink, we would only be about 3/4 of an acre there. So, sorry, a third of an acre there.
Acre, yeah.
Yeah.
Martin Park has no restroom facilities, and the parking is just in that circle, so.
That's correct. I think if that is something that, moves forward for some type of consideration, I think you have to look at, the infrastructure, the site amenities, your restrooms, those types of things that you would want to provide.
In answer to your question, my first reaction is I don't think I'm interested in a skate park in West Pinehurst Park. And I think the idea of collaborating with the other two towns or a town was a great idea and something that we ought to do more of in certain special situations. That's my view.
I agree.
I agree.
Okay, well, I'll get with Jeff and we can see what we need to do to move that idea forward then, so.
I also have the feeling, I meant to say that, and maybe you know the statistics better and you've given some tonight. I had the feeling that the response to the survey was we were rather deluged by persons who want the skate park. And it wasn't necessarily Pinehurst residents, certainly there were many, that came and had their input on that, which is why the data look a little skewed to me anyway.
Yeah, there was, that group's been looking for a skate park for a number of years now. So they're definitely organized and they did what you're supposed to do. This is what we want. We would like to see this here. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's, we still need to finish going through the survey. Everything I'm presenting to you tonight is in draft form, just to mention that again. But, we have a spreadsheet of all the survey responses that answers all the questions, and that's going to take some time still for us to go through and really be able to give you a good idea of how many Pinehurst residents indicated a desire for a skate park, and the other
We're
amenities
gonna
that are in
find
there
that
as well.
It's a relatively small but passionate group.
Right, yeah, yeah.
I'll just touch on a few other items here. Other facilities or amenities that came out of the survey as being most desired were paved walking trails, soft hiking or nature trails. There was some interest in an outdoor classroom, amphitheater, playground, and dog park. For youth, that list was skateboarding, water play, swimming, community gatherings, and a dog park. And then the top 5 most desired facilities for adults was skateboarding, walking, community gatherings, swimming, and engaging with nature. So you see some similarities amongst those 3 groups. So
Swimming, does that mean swimming pool?
it could mean whatever the village,
Well, the only water there
Wants
is a
that to
pond,
be.
and that
Yeah,
pond's full of snakes.
the only water is pond. You would not want to swim in that pond, and I would not recommend us doing that. As you can see on the concept up there, they do show a splash pad versus a swimming pool. The village already has a splash pad. Do we want to do a second one? Do we want to consider a pool? Certainly, there's a lot of costs involved in that, liability, and is that the right place for one if that's something that we choose to pursue?
I really don't want to see this turn into Disney World. This is a fabulous natural expanse of land on the outskirts of our ETJ, and it should reflect the ETJ. I'm even surprised at the amount of stuff in Concept B. I mean, Concept A, forget it. I mean, 535 parking spaces, how many people are going to be out there at a time? I'm not interested in having thousands of people attracted to this area. And Concept B is 250. I mean, I'm not interested in packing it out with every square inch. A 150-person amphitheater? Really? No. I mean, I'm also concerned because of the rural nature of the area the park is in, about hours of operation, lighting, noise. I think that it should be closed at sundown, It should not be lit up. And I don't think, want to attract people there at night anyway. but I don't think we want to have a loud thing going on at night out in the middle of the ETJ. I think we want to make very sure that we have plenty of screening on Chicken Plant and Bowman. Bowman being the most vulnerable here because that's where all the clearing is shown. I think it's got to be kept low-key, in my opinion.
And just to point out, just to keep in mind for everybody too, that, you know, what's shown on here is not what we're proposing tonight. These are just concepts from the consultants based on the feedback that we've received so far. Certainly, if you look at concept B, which is up there now, could those playing fields be shifted to the south to not cut into that buffer to Bowman Road? Yes, I think that would be an option. You know, is that the right location for a soccer field, a dog park, some of those other amenities? And Jane, I would have to agree with you. I'm not quite sure how often we would use an outdoor amphitheater when we already have performance spaces in the Arboretum and Tufts Park and the Fair Barn. So those are all things that we can certainly talk about, and we would be looking for direction from you in terms of, we like this concept, but I don't like these amenities in there. That's the type of feedback that we would like to provide back to the consultants so that they can bring us a site master plan that is reflective of what we want to see out on that property. Now, in terms of lighting and hours, you know, all of our parks right now are dawn to dusk. But obviously, when we have athletic fields, those hours are extended based on program and needs. Now, when this property was bought back in 2001, it was with the intent for this to be athletic fields in the future. That's why we envisioned and kind of were excited about that open field space. Does it have to be 2 fields or 3 fields? You know, could we look at that? Everything's on the table, but as we mentioned at the end of the attachment that I sent in terms of athletic fields, our usage is going up. Our wear and tear on our facilities is increasing, and we don't have time to restore those facilities. So having other athletic fields, lit or not, but preferably lit, alleviates that need. If we turn off the lights or don't have lights and you can't use it in the evening, then we're in the same position we are now, where our facilities at Cannon Park are going to get overrun. Now, we are adding lights to the Wicker Park soccer field, you know, in this next fiscal year. That will help. I think that will let us shift some use off of Cannon Park, shift some use away from the harness track, because we've had so much use at the harness track. We actually had Polo Cross for their tournament 2 weekends ago complain about field conditions because they're torn up. So everything factors into that. So just looking big picture, I totally understand the light pollution concern, and I think there's ways to minimize that on site so the lights aren't shining on adjacent properties, but those are all things that I think are part of the equation.
We can give you our opinion, Mark, but you know the need. But
And
can you tell me more about what you think you need rather than, you know, and I personally, I was trying to understand where the nature space is. I guess it's the Frisbee Golf Park that covers most of the nature space, right?
correct, yeah. On concept B, you know, the existing disc golf course, the pond, you know, that's your nature space. They also have shown a few wildflower fields on that site to help, you know, kind of make that a natural area. So I think all of that's involved in that. Concept B, 2 baseball fields and a rectangular field for soccer, football, lacrosse. In terms of Parks and Recreation staff, to us, that meets the need of what we have currently. 2 fields side by side. You can host a tournament. You can run your adult softball league on one facility. You could have Optimus Baseball, Coach Pitch Baseball at the other facility. So
It'd be hard for us to give his opinion without you telling us, you know, what you need, you know?
yeah, and Kevin, you're at a little disadvantage too, because one of the handouts that I have is our facility usage for Cannon Park, the harness track, where we show kind of what our use has been from 2020 to 2021 with existing reservations. So I'll read that real quick for you. Cannon Park Ball Field 1, which is the large field, in 2020 had 179 reservations for a total of, I'm assuming that's 20 hours and 16 minutes, but I haven't vetted that number, so I won't
What it
swear
looks
to
like
that.
to me.
Yeah.
Resident or non-residents?
Doesn't seem right.
It's a mix of residents, non-residents, parks and recreation activities as well, and our sponsored leagues with baseball, soccer, lacrosse. That same field so far in 2021 has had 253 bookings for 30 hours, 28. That must be, that's not hours based on that one. So
It's like 30 days.
it might be 30 days and
21
23
days.
hours. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's what it is. So
Right.
Field 2 last year at Cannon Park, which is the small ball field, had 174 bookings for 21 days, 12 hours. So far this year, it's 173 for 30 days, 15 hours. So the increase in usage is there. Now, a lot of that's due to COVID too. With COVID and other facilities and activities shut down, we've seen more people come outside. This might not be an organized rental at the field for an athletic league. It may just be a family coming out to play kickball or kick a ball around, whatever. So, there's lots of different uses that we're seeing out there. Now, at the harness track, we had 124 uses at the mile track for a total of 10 days and 4 hours. And so far in 21, we've had 93 bookings out there for 21 hours and 21 days and 17 hours. So less number of bookings by 31, but an increase times 2 of the hours that are used out there.
Yeah, so understanding what you need, and then the only comment I would say is, I look at that dog park and I try to relate it to the size of Southern Pines. That's only like an acre, isn't it? The dog park? What
The
is
one
that?
behind Walmart?
No, the one in your drawing here.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it looks like they've got it broken up between a large dog and a small dog park, fenced-in areas, which is, the right way to do it. But yeah, in the grand scheme of that 74-acre property, it is not very big, so.
It seems like the nature and the dog park and the wildfire thing, it seems like they all should be together. They're all natural. And then it looks like the Frisbee Golf Park, which I use, has been expanded, moves out into the middle of the field. Right?
That is actually, what you see on the Concept B is the existing disc golf course. If you look at Concept A, you can see there's some darker green sections where they actually would have to reroute the existing course to make that layout fit. And at first glance, I'm not a fan of that, and I know our disc golf community would not be a fan of that as well, so.
Okay, I'm just trying to understand it. But I mean, to me, if you're going to do, if you need that much, if you make up for it with an incredible green space, maybe that's just my thoughts.
And I think there's opportunities. I don't know that I would locate that dog park on the border with our adjacent property where there is a home, a small farm there. I might try to find another place on the facility for that so you don't have barking dogs right next to a neighbor, which certainly is going to lead to some complaints. So I think the siting and location of these amenities is certainly up for discussion as well.
Sure. Makes sense.
What's the participation in disc golf, which is there now? It seems like we're taking up a lot of space for that, and I'm not sure it's in high demand compared to other things.
They have a bi-weekly group that goes out and plays once during the week, once on the weekends typically. There's probably 2 or 3 tournaments that are hosted out there as well. And most of that disc golf, where that's located on the property, is where you start seeing your slopes as it goes down towards the pond and then rises back up towards the south of the property. There are a lot of wetlands through there, so you see the boardwalks that are proposed, walking trails through there. One of the challenges with the disc golf course is you don't want people walking or riding bikes through the middle of the disc golf course while someone is playing, because now you've created a hazard where a flying disc might hit someone, or someone riding a bike might not see a disc golfer. So I think they've done a fairly good job on this initial concept, separating those amenities, keeping it on the perimeter. But, that's certainly something to look at as well.
Mark, I agree with what Kevin Kevin's point about what do you need, but I'm not only need right now, but also planning possibly for future growth. And I really like your multi-purpose where you've got the flex field on top of, on concept A, it's a baseball field, a softball field, and they're limited use or one-time use. Where over on concept B, I really like that on this flat surface, you can do multiple things. But is this, would you need more than this? And I only ask that because, and I know this property really well. I don't know if you might want to, if possible, expand it for future needs. That's just a question. But also, I've seen with Park and Rec where they develop parks in 2 stages. So you had stage 1, but you also had a plan for stage 2 that you would implement later. So I don't know if we want to consider something like that.
I think definitely the consultants are going to provide us a phased implementation plan with X number of amenities, infrastructure in each phase that we can decide which direction we want to go. In terms of those flex fields, those are nice from the standpoint of you have a dedicated baseball field, and at the same time, you can also do soccer, football, lacrosse. The downside of that is if you're playing baseball, you can't also play soccer. So it's still only a single-use amenity. Unless you could maybe play soccer during the day and baseball at night or vice versa, but they can't be used for
And you're still
multiple
wearing out the same
activities.
grass.
And you're still wearing out the same grass, that's right.
And then as to lights, I mean, is it possible that you could, when we're doing the infrastructure, put in, I guess, the power lines that would be needed for lights and then later add them if needed rather than, okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really up to us in terms of once we see the final proposal from the consultants. I think we are definitely going to have a say in that timing and what that, infrastructure needs and when each amenity might be built. The first phase has to be infrastructure. There's no water on the site. We have overhead utility lines, and that's it. So, I think infrastructure is going to be a big piece of phase 1 in order for us to be ready for future phases. Whether that budget number stays right now as $500,000 in 2023 and $500,000 in 2025, I think is certainly up for discussion. And once we get their cost estimates and phasing, I think that's when we would need to revisit that.
I don't see restroom facilities on here.
There's a few
There's a couple of
small
them.
restroom / maintenance
Right in the middle.
or
Shelter.
shelters.
Yeah.
But obviously, we wouldn't build this facility without restrooms, without parking, without some type of maintenance shed, which could be a joint use like we used to have at Cannon Park, that has a place to store a mower, but has restrooms at the other end. So there's lots of different ways you can accomplish that.
And I agree with Jane. I don't like a 340 spot parking surface.
Yeah,
I
that
think that's
jumped
just
out
too
to
many.
me in Concept A when I looked at that.
Yeah.
That's a lot of use out there.
And you already have buffer along Bowman Road.
Yeah.
You're correct. There is a buffer on Bowman Road existing, and really Chicken Plant as well. It's not as thick as Bowman. That's another reason why, looking at Concept B, if we shifted those fields a little bit closer to the disc golf course, maybe we keep more of that buffer so that we don't have to disturb that.
Well, I have the photograph that you gave us some time ago when we were considering the additional acreage. And it shows, what's vacant and what's not.
Correct.
So there'd have to be a lot of landscaping taken out for certainly a Plan A.
Sure.
And as you made the idea here, Mark, that Plan B, if it were shifted, would save some of that, if that's what we want to do. But when the consultant's report's going to come when, and we don't really have this planned out for a couple of fiscal years, right?
Our next public input meeting is next week on the 15th. So if there is something in here that we just don't like, we
How do you
have,
get into some of that parking in the middle of these Concept A? I'm running over somebody, I'm trying to understand.
you liked it or didn't like it?
How do you get to that without running over somebody, that parking in?
Yeah, the way they had that was there would be an entrance off Chicken Plant and another entrance off of Bowman Road, and that would be a continuous road through the property. If you've ever been to the soccer complex on Morganton Road. They have a road that runs through that property. You have soccer fields on one side, a playground, baseball fields on the other. So it would be similar to that concept. I'm a little hesitant about that personally, just because you're going to have people crossing, going back and forth, using amenities.
Very strange to me. And then there's some parking in between, the two athletic fields on a.
I
I
think
don't
the
know.
swings by the snake pond take the cake.
But
Yeah.
I mean, you know, a great opportunity to get what you need and create a great natural environment, you know, in my opinion.
From my point of view, I certainly would favor something more along Plan B, but I think we're away from even knowing that based upon what funds we have, what the timing's going to be. But I think you should give feedback to the consultant about some of the comments from the council here tonight.
I'll definitely
There's
do
no
that.
point in them developing other plans that don't kind of,
Yeah, I think we can have them focus on concept B, and maybe we look at some of the location of some of the things. Do we want to pull some things out? And this will be something that, you know, if you're comfortable as is, we can show concept B and A really to the public. But if B is the preference, and get their feedback as well, and then we can come back. Obviously, we're not going to have a final site master plan to bring to you for adoption until August or September, so there's still some work to be done.
I'm not sure I got a clear answer from you what your need is, so.
Sorry, Kevin, in terms of amenities, concept B would meet the Parks and Recreation needs with 2 baseball fields,
Good.
it's the 1 dedicated soccer field, and then, you know, I don't know that we need another splash pad. No, we already have one.
I didn't know if you needed more baseball fields, for example. I understand about the splash pad issue.
Sure, yeah. I
was
think 2 fields scratches our itch in terms of what we need. Certainly, if you look at a wheel with 4 fields, that's ideal if you're looking at hosting tournaments, but I'm not hearing that that's something that we're interested in doing necessarily out there, is attracting a lot of out-of-towners or folks coming for big tournaments to this site. Okay?
Okay,
I'd also scratch the stuff over by the pond. I mean, and I don't really see the need for an amphitheater, I've got to say.
Okay.
yeah, I would agree with that, too.
Yeah. How does everybody else feel about the pond? Some type of dock, whether it's fishing or just an overlook?
that water feature has been so bad, it might make that whole site more attractive by dressing it up, you know, getting the weeds out of it.
Yeah, get the trees out of
But
it.
everybody told me that, gosh, we got this water feature that's pretty bad, and it can really look nice.
You just do something as simple as depicted there, put a little dock out there. There'll be a lot of fishermen in our village that will appreciate that.
Would we be liable if they all got bitten?
Snake bit.
Well, it would be a snake pit when they're done. I don't believe, but maybe it would.
Public water
Maybe
bodies
not.
all over the place that have docks like that.
Sandstone.
Yeah, we have snakes in Wicker Park. We have water features here, so, I mean, they're literally everywhere. But
Where Park?
Wicker Park here on this facility, so, yeah, sorry, you probably didn't want to hear that, but, but,
Sandstones that are on the planet Earth on this plot too. I don't know how it's a big sand spur area.
yeah, you know, Kevin, I think the sand spurs would largely go away with development as you're irrigating, you're putting in turf fields. I think a lot of that would go away, but certainly there's ways that I think you can remediate that.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of disc golf, but the water feature, I'd hope would be able to be used by everyone, not just the disc golfers, you know?
And I think that's one of the challenges to the site, the way the course is laid out now.
Yeah.
But they're showing a path to get down there. And one thing about that pond too, you know, we may have great plans to develop this water feature. It doesn't always hold water. Is the spillway going to have to be repaired? You're going to have to do an environmental analysis on that. So there's a lot more steps to be involved before we can say, hey, we've got a great water feature to use.
Okay, thank you.
The pay, excuse me, oh, do you have a question?
No, I was just going to make a comment that with so many families moving into the Lake Pinehurst area, I think, you know, this is going to be a great recreational source for people up and down Linden Road and all around to come over here and use this. So I think these fields are definitely needed.
Paved walking trail?
They do show a paved walking loop around the athletic fields, and then the grit trails, natural trails are more around where the disc golf and in the perimeter of the south of the property.
I'm not wild about concrete, if we could do screenings or something.
That would totally be up to you in terms of what you would want to see in that facility.
So you'll be coming back to us after the next input and with some sort of a master
Yeah,
plan, concept plan in the fall,
Yeah,
or late summer.
Once we have that next public input, the consultants will take that with the feedback that I'll provide them, and then I think they'll be in a position to where they can finalize these concepts and bring something for us to consider. And
Okay.
it will include, like I said, cost estimates and phasing opportunities for that as well.
Okay.
Thank you,
Okay.
Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, and definitely encourage you to, talk with the other jurisdictions about this skate park.
I'll get with Jeff on that, so.
Yeah, the joint venture idea.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on into agenda item number 3, pedestrian walkway plan. I think this is here more as a placeholder, and we need to keep thinking about that and what we're going to do. Jeff, did you have a further comment on that, though? or-
I don't, I was just going to say, we don't have anything prepared
Right.
by the staff relative to either of these next.
I think maybe the follow-up over time there is clarifying, as Judy, I think, would like, and we all would like, what was intended by the existing bicycle and ped plan. And then and then the look or not that we want to have in any kind of walkways and sidewalks in different parts of the village. I think those are some of your concerns. Judy, I don't mean to speak for you, but those are the ideas, I think.
John, may I add something? Were you going to add to what John just
Go ahead.
said? Now, I went and looked at the pedestrian master plan. It's 167 pages long. I pulled out some key pages from it and highlighted it.
Right.
It's the first time I've ever laid eyes on this, and I thought, what happened to this? And Mark, maybe, I don't know if I need an answer from
No,
Mark.
this is what I was going to say. I
But
talked to Mark about it,
and-
and I hadn't read it either. It was a scroll by trying to get to the PDO for me. I mean, it did ring a distant bell, but I'd never, nobody else has to know, read it. But I did read it. And we've also got one for bicycle. And I talked to Mark, and it turns out that, first of all, it was done in 2015
Yes,
with a whole Planapalooza situation and an awful lot of citizen input, and they've got priorities on where they want to put, the different sidewalks and so forth. And every year, what the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee does is, they look at the plan, and they look at the surveys citizen surveys, because there's always questions about sidewalks and stuff, and sort of update the plan by using the surveys for the last 2 or 3 years, which is great. And so I asked Mark, and he said, we really don't need to redo all these plans. There they are. All we have to do is read them, and we're good.
well,
Mark, you
I
don't-
guess that's.
See them and decide what we want to do with potential implementation. Yeah. Lydia?
Well, to your point, I mean, there's some good material in this plan.
I know it. Imagine
And,
that.
I don't even know if the Bike and Ped Committee has even looked at this, so I don't know. I found this fascinating. I thought it would be a good
Fascinating rhythm.
guide
There
for,
you go.
I'm glad to hear that. I worked on that committee.
well, it's 167 pages
Well,
long.
thank you, John.
We don't need this.
Why don't we,
Mark, are you still there?
I'm sorry, Kevin, go ahead.
Mark still there?
Mark is right
Yeah,
here,
he's
so
here.
is Jeff Batten.
Is that true? You're saying we don't need a multimodal plan and consolidate our plans? Is that what Jane
I
said?
wouldn't say that you don't necessarily need one, but I think you have two major components of that already in place in terms of the pedestrian bicycle plans.
I agree with that. These two different things here. And I think it's a good time to bring up the Tri-Cities and the Triangle J is trying to, this is one of their subject matters. And they're also getting paid to help municipalities through this, government money that's coming their way. And there's opportunities, especially in connections to other municipalities, to work with them on this project. Would you agree with that, Jeff and Judy, on that last discussion?
Yeah, I think there's interest in all, from all three communities to working on connectivity between our communities. And what that means is that our plans need to be coordinated.
And they could be funded if they're coordinated. So I think that's important.
And I'll add too, Kevin, that when we created the pedestrian and bicycle plans back in 2015, we did coordinate with Southern Pines and Aberdeen and Carthage, so we do show connections on Airport Road, on Highway 5, up 15501, that were tied in with their pedestrian plans that they had at the time. So those connections are there, they're already in those plans. If, it's already multimodal from the standpoint of you've got pedestrians, bicycles. If we just want to add a golf cart component to that, I really think that's the only missing piece.
Okay, and then, well, that would mean that if we focused on our connections, we might could get it funded by outside source, is what I kind of heard at that meeting.
That is correct. If you're looking at connection from town to town, you certainly have much better opportunities for grant funding for that as well. And I think you are going to score a lot more points on those, evaluations that they do for projects.
To get our public on the other side of that circle is going to take a lot of money. I don't know how it's going to be done safely.
Yeah, there's a couple routes in the pedestrian and bicycle plan, some of which I'm not personally wild about, but there are ways to do it, and those plans do indicate a route.
But that might be our opportunity. It's not controversial to connect this to other towns. It might be controversial. People keep on talking about their house and their sidewalk and their front yard. Connectivity to other towns shouldn't be that controversial.
My suggestion is to push this forward to one of our next work sessions when we maybe all had a chance to update ourselves on the content of that plan and to see how that comes into other work we could be doing on that, or anything that's in the plan that we should be acting on going forward.
And if someone doesn't have a hard copy and you would prefer one, we'd be happy to make those and provide them for you.
I'm sure I have mine, but yeah, we might need others.
Okay, Lydia, I'll get you copies.
Obviously, a subject of interest from a lot of different points of view with transportation, recreation, all of that.
Yeah.
I'd like to focus next then on item 4, where I think we need a little discussion on this, on the on-street dining and retail parking ideas. And I think Jeff Batten is going to come up and join us a bit on that. I think, Jeff, you had the idea to follow up in the last couple of weeks with some of our businesses on that subject, perhaps, and you have something in your hand I think you want to hand out.
Yeah, I do. Jeff hasn't even had a chance to see this. But,
Microphone, please. Thank you. So Kevin won't have a copy of this, but
I
it'll be
just
put in your
finished
box.
this,
And I can
actually.
see that the Drum and Quill has been interviewed here, so I assume we know who that might be from.
Yeah. You can see it's dated June 1, but I just finished it actually today.
And-
And I wasn't even positive that we were talking about this today. But
Right.
anyway. So when we were talking about the on-street dining and the concept of, whether we would want to continue it on or not, the suggestion was to maybe talk to some of the restaurants downtown. So that's kind of what I did. Before we could, really continue on-street dining, it's going to ultimately require the state legislature to make permanent the expansion of the ABC licensure that they did on a temporary basis for COVID. And there has been some legislation introduced. And Kevin, I'm put you on the spot. Do you know where we stand or where that particular piece of
Yes.
legislation is?
The ABC board knows there's a lag and they're going to allow it to continue until the bill gets through the House. So I have that letter from the ABC board. I thought I sent it to you.
Yeah, you did. I just wanted to give you that chance to update everybody, since you're
What
the
it is,
expert.
is ABC board is really the big linchpin on this. It's been a very conservative state that used, they wouldn't allow members to mimosa, so you could have a mimosa at 10 a.m. We couldn't get it where you can do it at 8 a.m., but we got it done when you do it at 10 a.m. It's very conservative. Enlightenment at the ABC board being that some of these are just old blue laws that, maybe this is not our role is to stop stuff from happening. Our role is to maybe give the control to the local municipality and the county. And so that's kind of what I think is going on, and I, as far as the bill, I got confused by some of the writing in the bill, and I was told it says exactly what the governor's order said. So, but usually it's gobbledygook language that I'm not used to. But anyway, that's, what I know now, and I think, there's something came up with, that maybe moved this to not get approved immediately, and the ABC board sent that letter of clarification. If the order ends, which it has not officially, if the order ends and it doesn't get extended, the ABC will still extend it. That's what I know.
Yeah, and I understand the legislation, the way as written, would leave the decision at the local level. So
Yes. Everything.
ultimately, if the on or adjacent site, on-street dining kind of ABC licensure is allowed to continue to extend there on a permanent basis, then it would ultimately be up to the local delegates to decide as to whether you wanted to continue it or not. So with all that being said, what I did was I sent a request for information to Drummond Quill, Theo's, Dugan's Pub, Lisi's, and
Villager Deli,
Villager Deli. Thank you.
reading your notes.
Yeah, so this is just a summary that you can read over, but I sent 3 questions essentially to them. One, were they interested in keeping the on-street dining going after the COVID passes? 2, if so, what nights are of greatest interest to them? And 3, would they support the village creating some type of appearance standards for these enclosures? Essentially, I got 4 respondents back. Lisi was the only one that didn't hear back from. Out of those, when it answered to question number 1 about whether this on-street dining should continue, all but 1 were in favor of it continuing, including Villager Deli, who currently doesn't really operate in the evening hours. Theo's didn't think it was necessary to continue. They of course, have ample outdoor dining space, and so they're in a little different environment, I think, than some of the others. Answer to number 2, the same 3 that originally supported the idea of retaining the on-street dining, all said 7 nights a week would be their preference, as we are currently doing, which also includes Sunday during the day. And then the last one, I got 2 responses on the question about appearance guidelines, and the responses there were supportive in nature. One of those, Dugan's, was just wanted to have the ability to have some input on that because of their concerns about storage capacity. They just don't have that much storage capacity. Theo's didn't really respond to that question, nor did they respond to the second question about which nights, since they were not necessarily in favor of continuing. And then Villager Deli indicated that if this was going to be a permanent situation, they apparently would consider doing some outdoor dining, perhaps in the evening. He just indicated they would consider investing in being available in order to operate. I'm not sure what that meant because he already has tables outside and all of that kind of thing, but nonetheless,
Staff.
staff could be, that's probably a large component of the problem right now anyway, across the board.
I can see him more equipment.
Yeah. There was a space for additional comment, and Drummond Quill provided some additional comment, and there were basically, as I interpreted the emails to be, and this is summation of, probably should not have any just takeout parking alone. On-street dining should be kind of limited to what's in front of that particular business and not be allowed really to be in front of an adjacent business. And then as I think a consideration to the rest of the merchants down there, that some type of potential nighttime outdoor displays, sales, or whatever, might be another add, which was kind of a sidebar from the topic at hand, but it was a comment that was made. You also have verbatim, just cut and pasted right out of the emails, so you can read specifically what they each had to say. And then there was, on a separate but related note, retail signage. Kevin made a observation about maybe the retail parking only signs, that if we were going to retain those, that maybe customer parking would be a better wording. The only thing that, and it's just probably the same thing for retail, but maybe not as much, but customer parking only might imply to someone that it's customer parking for that business where that sign is sitting in front of, and not meant to be customer parking for the community of businesses. So I still don't know what's the best wording if we were to change that, if we're going to retain those signs. I think retail does create confusion, because in my mind, when we talked about retail, I always assumed restaurants was part of that, but others don't think that way, and so there's a little bit of confusion about that word as being used retail too. So I don't know what's the best word to use if we're going to retain them.
How about shopping and dining parking? There's 2 words, but
Yep, and there's room on the sign for that.
What was the comment?
shopping and dining parking.
Shopping and dining parking, yeah.
Well, I mean,
Simple enough.
village, business customer parking, I mean, the point I was trying to make there is deal with the bigger issue. It wasn't about what you guys are talking about right now. It was trying to infer the bigger issue that that guy, real estate agent, has got to pull in and park in that space, not be able to force it, but maybe old-fashioned guilt will solve some of this problem if it said, they all said, this is for customers, and I just thought that was kind of my long-term idea on that. And I don't care what the wording is. Village shops customer parking, I mean, or, I don't really care what the wording is.
Yeah. I don't know that we have to make a determination tonight on this, because it all is going to hinge on whether the legislature passes this extension. In the meantime, right now, we have put out communications that, we were going to continue this for the foreseeable future under the current guidelines that we have. So if there are changes that we want to make, I think we'd be better served to wait until we know for sure that this is going to be able to be continued. And then if we do know that, then I think we could make have a conversation about, well, what do we really want this to look like on a permanent basis? Because I do think the cones and that kind of stuff is not really
Right.
our aesthetics for our community if it's going to be a long-term setup. So I do think we need to address that, but how we do it, in what way we want to do it, I think that's a conversation we could have in one of these work sessions that's specific to, to this topic.
Yeah, maybe some different input, but I do continue to have some reservations about this, and it's on a lot of different levels. One is the permanent versus temporary thing that Jeff is talking about, and there's a reason it's being done with cones and stuff right now, and that's because you got to throw it out there every night. And it's hard for me to understand how we can make this something that's visually acceptable to our community without it being a permanent arrangement. So I guess more remains to be seen on that, and it's certainly a conversation to be had, but I'm concerned that we just may not get there. Jeff also mentioned, that somebody suggested in order to be fair to the other businesses downtown, we should be making some other accommodations for them as well. And that kind of resonates with me. And so if you're going to have on-street dining, does that mean that we, to be fair to everybody else down there, we should also have on-street sidewalk sales every night of the week? And what does that look like? And is that appropriate? And then there's the whole, there's a reason that Theo's isn't necessarily enamored with this, is because they made an investment in a property that gives them the ability to do this. They paid the money for it, right? But what we're contemplating is giving it to everybody else for free. And I'm not saying that's necessarily at the end of the day, is the wrong solution, but I think we should be thinking about that. And I should think that we should be thinking along the lines of, if this is something that we want to do in the future, maybe it shouldn't be for free, it should be a lease. So everybody's got skin in the game, and we're driving toward something that's beneficial for everybody, so.
The lease would be based on the usage of the village's right-of-way, I guess, in the road and
The
sidewalk.
parking
way.
spaces,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's
I
right.
see.
Yeah.
And then back to Jeff Batten's point on, I guess one of the ideas here was that the outdoor dining should take up only the frontage of a building, not go beyond that much. Okay, so
Right.
that
That was
sets
the
a-
comment, I believe.
Still the right-of-way.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean,
Some
but
ideas,
it helps
summarizing.
define.
That's right, but it
It
does
helps
define it,
define
yeah.
that space, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think the permanency, the temporary nature of what we have now, is an issue if you make it go forward. And in the beginning, Alan was bringing out tables from inside, and then he switched to card tables, out in the street. And now I don't see him out there very much at all. So I think it's, it's a real burden on the business to have, something that is robust enough, that looks good enough.
Yeah.
And Kevin's got, flower pots that he can move out there, and his nice umbrella. And, Lisi's got a patio, Coley's got a patio. People have made investments in one way or another. But I do think that the outdoor dining is a good look, and it adds to the vibrancy of the village. And, we go up there a lot of times on Friday nights, and it's a hopping place.
Yeah, and I also would add the comment that I thought it was still a temporary nature. We have people that are uncomfortable with eating inside still, So, I mean, I don't know when that's going to end. You guys' guess is as good as mine, but my porch doesn't count as outdoor dining. They really think that they're protecting themselves out there. And so anyway, I could go either way. It is, because it is difficult. I made the choice to make an investment to make it look better. But guess what? I could take that investment to my house, So I made a smart investment, but for me to invest in this and do it right, I'd like to do it better than I'm doing it now. And I need some clarity. I'm doing the best I can with what I got now. The flower pots were the greatest barriers, by the way. I have a lot of beat up ones, just had to buy 4 more because they are really hard barriers with the dirt in them. And so I use them as barriers, and I think they are much better barriers. A cone you could run right over. You can't run over one of those flower pots. That flower pot kind of beats up your car a little bit. And so there's a reason I have them on the side. It's to protect my customers from getting, vehicular traffic. And there's a reason that we have them. So, and I don't know, that might be a good starting point if you were going to continue it. I mean, flower pots are pretty easy. But I hear you, Jeff. I just didn't know that there are still people out there that outside. I have people, entertainers, that won't play inside. I mean, this thing isn't over. it seems like it's almost over. I'm up in Martha's Vineyard right now. Doesn't seem over up here. It seems like people are still a little tentative up here.
Yeah.
A lot of takeouts going on.
What is the date Kevin, what is the date again on the ABC and how, and is that the critical date we're looking at, or, and then
Well,
we
there's
have to
two-
adopt an ordinance?
There's the governor extended his order, I think, till the end of the week, and the AB said they'd extended permission of municipality to make rules beyond that date if he doesn't extend his order. If he extends his order, I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe one of you guys know on what's going to happen. But either way, the ABC is going to permit it until they have the legislature deal with it, because they don't want to take it away without being told to take it away, is what I've been told. So that's just a layman's term. You got the letter. I asked for a letter and I gave it to Jeff.
Yeah, okay.
Is that what it said, Jeff?
Yeah, I think that's what I understood.
Yeah.
Kevin.
But I think the consensus of the council is we'd like to, under the right appearance standards, we'd like to encourage the continuation of outdoor dining if a restaurant wishes to participate. Jane?
Well, there was just a liability issue from that webinar that we saw a couple weeks ago. And apparently, there are various barriers that one can put if you've got a street event, but none of them actually work, it turns out. So
Yeah.
And if you don't put them out exactly the way it says in the code,
Yeah. And while visually pleasing, the heavy flower pot type of a thing isn't really, that's not really designed to be a barrier, and it wouldn't stop a car. If a car hit it hard enough, it'd just throw it into a person, and so those are some of the concerns that they talked through
So do we have a liability issue
during that webinar.
And if there is a liability issue out there, then I think we need to
I agree with
figure
that.
out how it all works, which I have to say, listening to that webinar, was it 3.5 hours, 4.5 hours? It was
Like 3
long,
hours.
Only saying-
Color of your vest.
and it was hard to follow in
Won't
elaborate
get
detail.
that 3.5 hours back.
But we would have to figure it out in detail and know what it would take to do it properly, I think.
Right. And Jeff, I was only saying that the cones are 10 times more the flower pots are 10 times more effective than cones. I'm not saying.
Well,
mean,
there's
they're-
reality, Kevin, and then there's the rules. I'm just going to
Yeah,
say.
Yeah.
I think I think that you should incorporate these looks rules like immediately, and I'd have no problem with the lease arrangement. And it could be ended by either party with notice, and because maybe that will solve the liability issue.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. In the lease, you can address the liability.
For free. I got a business problem that people don't want to go inside. They want to sit outside. And, that's my problem. And before COVID, not many people really wanted to sit outside. They want to sit inside. So it's kind of a reversal. And when will that end? I don't know. You can end it any time, though. You don't have to wait until, the idea for me was it helps me recover lost money.
So what are the next steps then? I mean, obviously, the ABC and legislature, that's going to determine it, but are there other things we should be considering in anticipation of favorable rulings? And would that be appearance of the dining? And then we need to talk about the retail, or as Lydia says, shopping and dining signage, that sort of thing?
Yeah,
Bill?
I think those are the correct things that you're bringing out there. The liability, there's a whole, plethora of things that probably would need to be evaluated in order for us to come forth with any kind of recommendation, if the direction from you is, let's figure out a way to keep it, and be fair. Then I think, there's a lot of homework that still has to be done. I don't know that we want to spend a lot of resources and time right now not knowing for certain whether this is going to pass or not. through the House and Senate legislature. If it does, then we've got, first question is, do we want to keep it? And if we do want to keep it, now we need to go and do some homework to figure out how do we keep it, and we do it right, and we do it safely, and we make it look the way we would want to make it look.
So is that something you could spend some time on, or you want to wait? Are we trying to wait for the legislator to make a decision? What?
I mean, we could begin a little bit of that gathering of information for sure. I don't want to go into, an extensive and
Right.
exhaustive research right now and not knowing, what the outcome will be with the state legislature. But gathering
might-
up some basic information can be done.
I think we're
Could I-
generally supportive of the idea. Kevin, you have a comment?
Yeah, could I recommend you send your document, which I think is the smartest thing we did. I insisted that if you remember when this happened, make them sign a document, require something from them. And that was my biggest point. We did that. We did that right. That document, can you send that to Mike? I think that's a good use of time, and see if he has any thoughts on what a future document would look like. But maybe not, maybe this isn't the time, but, because you threw that together pretty quick, Jeff, didn't you? Yeah.
I did. Admittedly, yes, there's probably some shortfalls in it, probably many.
Maybe you can, figure out this issues and if you wanted to do it, and it's not a lot of staff time, but I just think that's the most brilliant thing is we got agreements, and if you break the agreement, you lose the right. And, and I think that was the smart thing we did. And I think that agreement could be improved on looks and a lease.
Yeah, I think that document was well done. I mean, it's carried us quite a ways on this. Well, let's take lead from staff then. I think council's interested in maintaining this presence with good appearance on the dining side, some signage changes on the retail side. And we'll just take your lead, I think, on the timing to bring it back to us, but there's interest in having it work. I will say since the first of the year, but more intensively in the last 60 days, in conversations I've had with some landlords and some businesses, even some of the real estate community, they understand basically what we were trying to accomplish by allowing outdoor dining on the one hand and creating some retail parking spaces on the other. They don't, and even in the case of one of the landlords, they understand that they could do some things to encourage some of their tenants, whether they're retail tenants or second floor tenants, to abide by the parking standards a little more than they do. And I think as we work forward on this, we may therefore find more cooperation from some of the landlords in helping to enforce and organize the parking situation. And clearly the retailers, the shoppers, and dining and shoppers appreciate it very, very much. So I think it's been helpful.
And to clarify, we don't do the curbside anymore anywhere, do we?
It's sort of a,
Technically, no, but I will tell you that Theo's, I think, uses their space sometimes for that purpose.
Okay,
For some of
gotcha.
their more
They don't use it
elderly,
for outdoor dining.
clientele.
shall we go on then to the next item? I guess we're looking at sort of a modest update from the small area plan discussions, and then we have our work session as well. Our closed meeting, sorry. Thank you for being with us, Darren. The SAPs ×2.
I actually don't have an update at this point for you. I could just tell you where we're going. I'm having a meeting with Cecily tomorrow to talk about the next steps to get additional feedback. I think,
Walk into the microphone. Thank you.
we are, I'm meeting with Cecily, and we're having that discussion tomorrow. And basically, what we'd like to do is post, this facilitator packet up on the website and get a poll going. This is the presentation that Cecily did last week This is, and I gave you the electronic copy.
Yeah.
This is just my hard copy of it from,
Right.
that I printed for myself. I can print you all copies if you'd like.
These were from the webinars and the breakouts. the
Correct.
2-3 hour meeting. we
Correct.
had.
It is not it's not the results from the meeting yet. Those have not been compiled yet.
Right.
What we're doing is we want to post this on a website, have a survey, leave it open for 10 days to 2 weeks, compile all the results, and then come back to you with the results so we can talk about our findings thus far, and then where we want to go with the rest of the plan. We know that there's some concerns raised already during the meeting with some of the land use scenarios, so we know there are some concerns there. But short of that, we haven't compiled everything, so other than some of the individual comments that you've had or we've heard from the public, there's nothing that I don't have any organized feedback at this point.
Okay, all right. I think, well, of course, Judy and I and Jeff ended up in the same breakout group, right? With a couple of residents and some others.
Yeah, I don't know how they distributed those rooms, because I ended up, and I can float between the rooms, because I ended up with Jane and Jack, and they were both you were in the same rooms last time, I believe, too.
Well, and there was like nobody else there. There was one lady who came in late.
Yeah.
Or were there other people not talking?
There were other people not talking. You were talking a lot, so they couldn't, no, I'm kidding.
The group
I
I got,
asked you to comment at one point, and there was a deathly hush.
Was I still in the room?
He floated,
We don't know.
popped in and out.
I did.
Yeah, you moved in and out.
I like
How
to-
many breakout rooms were there?
I think there were 8, but the problem was, in some of them, the rooms, there were not a lot of people in the room, so I think they could have been combined a little bit. I think the anticipation was there are going to be more people attending based on our last experience, but for some reason, maybe it was too close to Memorial Day, we didn't get the attendance that we had anticipated. But there was still some there was still some active discussion in some of the rooms
Yes.
that I was able to attend.
Gentlemen in our room.
We
Mr.
actually,
Yeah.
in both cases, kind of ran out of time.
Did, actually, yeah.
Yeah, so,
Because there were a couple of residents there. This gentleman, Mr. Squires, if I recall the name correctly, was quite
Yeah.
interesting.
Kendall
I thought.
Squires was in CCNC, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to
He
try
was
to,
terrific.
Darren, I was concerned about the level of participation. The people that were in had a lot to say, but the numbers that participated, which we all acknowledge was not what you thought. Is there anything we need to do to bolster that next time, or do we change our plan? Why are you
this-
laughing?
I
It just,
any old problem.
oh, really?
I
Well,
think we
first-
kind of anticipated this, though, that there's been a lot of seminars available from the village on lots of subjects, and it's hard to get people to keep doing that. But I think the input we've been getting is good, and I think council has certainly heard from individual citizens over time on this, let alone in the breakouts of the webinar.
I thought online we'd get more participants than in person. I really felt the numbers could move the other way. You could do it from your living room, from your den. I just thought, I'm disappointed in these numbers.
Yeah, I
Very,
think the holidays definitely should be avoided. You know, that certainly could have been a factor. But I think that when you see that you have a small group of people, you just need to be more fluid and on the fly, reduce the number of breakouts. Because, I mean, that's what I do with my clients. You know, you don't want to have a group of 3 people in a room. That's not going to be conducive to anything. So you got to get your critical mass and change the number of breakouts you have. So you get some exchange and then spread us out.
Correct.
I thought a hijacking going on in mine. I thought Darren was mad at me or something, put me in a room.
That was all random.
Yeah, but there was just a lot of hijacking and it wasn't not enough time for, and then I kind of just said, can we stay on subject? And then with the same group on the second thing, it worked out well because they realized, you know, everybody talked, but just stay on subject. They were getting off subject. The second breakout group, it ran pretty well. First one was chaotic.
I think, too, there were a lot of what I will call interested parties.
Or what?
There were a lot of what I will label as interested parties who had signed up for the webinar to listen to what was being suggested in the 2 small area plans. but they were not necessarily participating in the breakout room to which they were assigned.
And then there were people that were in that category that were participating.
And
Which
the
is in-
Yeah.
The other thing I wish that we would have done differently, and hopefully we'll be in person next time, and we should be in person,
Yeah.
is that when we broke out the first group, I would have liked to have just reshuffled the cards and put everybody into different rooms again, so you weren't in with the same group of people.
Great idea.
And also, if it's known in advance that the participation's limited, let's not have 8 breakout rooms, let's have 5.
Yeah.
And then you automatically increase the number of folks assigned to those rooms. And I did wonder, and we're just getting out of it, that, the next time, if this is done, not only for this plan, but something else, I think we're back to the point of meeting in person.
I hope
And
so.
that may be attractive to others.
And I think, the next one will be the one where we want people in person, because at that point, the plans are going to be a lot more fleshed out. So this is an important step in the process, but the next step is going to be more visually, the plans are going to be more complete. So I think it's more important that we are in person and we're, talking at street level with everybody.
Yeah. I
If
think
you're-
too
if
that
you're-
one of and I think it was in our breakout for Pinehurst South, there was concern expressed that it was a lot more residential planned in there than had been anticipated from the outline, from the way that we had thought it might be.
No,
Maybe-
Yeah, I don't like these plans, especially Pinehurst South. And I think they're both a problem. Are we going to get to comment on them, or should I just send an email, or?
well, I think the idea was we wanted to get the comments. I mean, you can have your comments, but we were waiting to get the feedback on the plan so we could have a more effective conversation on everything.
The idea of proceeding along this road doesn't work for me.
That's where I think before we
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
down that road, we need to hear what
Yeah,
What everybody said.
consolidated report is
Yeah.
back from our.
yeah, because we had people in our group that were very much in favor of the high-density plan for Pinehurst South. And
Surprisingly enough.
which was like, whoa. And then, but everybody thought, there were a couple of really brilliant things that they did in all those plans. I mean, having one access to Pinehurst South off
Yeah,
the
the
lake
road.
was brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean, that was really terrific.
The parallel road, yeah.
I would say that my participants didn't know the exercise, didn't understand it. I wish it was clearly said. In other words, a lot of them thought it was our property to do it as we see fit.
Oh, yeah.
They wanted baseball fields and there was a lack of understanding that we're trying to do this plan so we can, when people come in, that we could get this character-based development. And then, oh, that's what this is about, but I guess my point is they really thought it was our property to do with it as we see fit. They didn't realize it was a roadmap for private property owners, except one person in the group did, and mentioned that pretty heavily. But I just thought it was interesting. A lot of people didn't understand what exercise was doing.
That's a threshold issue that I would never thought to explain, but that's a
And
great.
Kevin, that was brought out in my group. So my group understood that. And I don't know if the facilitator did it, but it was brought out. Maybe somebody asked the question, but that was brought out.
I thought Cecily did go over that at the beginning, but
Yeah.
I don't remember.
maybe we just need to do better
Yeah,
at that.
yeah. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying it wasn't done.
So what are the next steps? You're going to talk with her?
Tomorrow we're
And then
gonna
you got to
talk-
put this on the,
We want to get this online with a poll, and I'm going to see about that video, because I think we taped it, so I got to talk to her.
It was
about
recorded,
It was-
yes.
It was
Mhm.
recorded. See if
The
we
main
can-
sessions.
See if at least we can get the main session up there, so anybody, so we can get that up. And then I'll report back what the game plan that we have. Now, if you want me to print you out a copy of this, I can print you out, anybody who wants a copy, I can print it out. I mean, old school, so I
I've
like.
only got one plan for each of the two ones, and I don't have a high and a low density.
Yes, you do. I did send it to you.
Did you?
Yes.
Send it to council.
You balled them up and threw them away in the wish.
but there were links we clicked onto.
I've got it filed under wish list.
I hate this.
I very many comments. I was
So Darren,
on
you
it.
have sent something to, you have emailed something?
I know I emailed.
I don't need a copy, I'm not that,
You
mentioned-
have, you have this, but I
Yes.
can print you out if you want
Soft
one.
copy.
And this has everything in it.
Right, yeah.
And the important thing to look at, when you start to look at the high-intensity and low-intensity plan, so for example, I'm looking at the Pioneer South high-intensity plan, and this is why, what was that?
Yeah, yes, he sent it to you for the 50th time.
I know I said, I thought I sent it. I'm going to
Like the
verify.
next- Like the next day in an email, an attachment.
Email with links.
It was an email with a link.
It is also up on the project webpage. So the workshop, it's up there, but I can
It
resend.
wasn't before the meeting, but it's now there.
Correct,
Okay,
it is up there right now. But when you start to look at it, they did put the absorption numbers into each of the plans, so the high intensity and low intensity. So if you look at something like the Pioneer South, the proposed high intensity plan, and this is why I think they incorporated some of that residential in there, because you look at the office space, the total is 280,000 square feet. Now, you divide 280,000 square feet out by an absorption rate of what, 20 to 25,000 over 5 years? That, that plan, this is a long-term plan. We're talking 50 years. So I think that's why they were trying to look at, other things that could create some activity down there, knowing that that office space is just not going to fill in over any near future.
Aaron, when is the next workshop?
The next workshop will determine once we give them the feedback on these plans.
Yeah.
Then we'll have to do the crafting work. So it depends on how long it's going to take them to craft those plans. Let me just take a look at the schedule that they had in here.
It's not, it doesn't say, that's why I asked.
Does it?
Yeah.
I thought it said,
Yeah, I didn't see.
that should be end of phase 3.
It kind of makes it look like it's the end of this month, but I know it's not true, so.
No, they didn't, they probably didn't have a sheet long enough
Yeah.
to cover that area. I'll look at the schedule, but it says phase 3 starts directly after public workshop 2 and will conclude by October 2021. So we could assume sometime in,
Is that the end of that phase?
it says, yeah.
Talking early fall.
Yeah. We'll take a look, because we do have to keep our eye on the ball on this. We've fallen a little bit behind just because it's taken us a little bit further. But on the other hand, we also have those moratoriums out there that are going to expire. I'll have to look at when they expire. So that's also, that comes into discussion at some point. So
When do we give feedback on these?
we were going to, I mean, you can give me feedback at any time, but we were trying to present you with a document that had a compilation of the feedback that we've gotten from the public.
Jane, it does matter that we hear from the public. And I know that sounds arresting to you.
I don't think so.
I think you know that I'm an ongoing
I'd like to have an
feed.
opportunity to give feedback right now.
You-
I had,
Well, we can, I think we can submit in writing any feedback that the council members have,
Yeah.
and then
Okay.
that's consistent with what I think Jeff's suggesting. We have the other,
Yeah.
go ahead.
And I think that might be just an important, just your initial thoughts, just of the plans in a few sentences. I think that would help for me to be able to get that in a few sentences.
Pointing at Jane, for the record.
yeah, 2 sentences.
Not your initial thoughts.
Just a few thoughts on each of the plans. I think that would be helpful.
2 thoughts on each plan, Jane.
I think that would be helpful just to get back to the consultant.
Man.
So use your words wisely.
I only answered the question I was directly asked, but there was one question I asked on both plans. Why is there one or the other? Why can't there be a hybrid? And what they said to me is there might be.
There can be.
It should be.
And
Yeah.
that, I kept on saying, I didn't understand this. Well, and I think we got to understand this is an exercise, or we're going to be in trouble here. It's just an exercise, and it will get us there. And I thought it was helpful the way they,
And I think the duration of this is much longer then when you're looking at it, it's not next week, it's not next year, it's not the next 5 years. I mean, it really is 25, 50 years.
50 years in one case.
Yeah. So, I-
Understand how that works.
It's absorption. There's the total amount of square footage versus the annual absorption rate of those type of uses in our market. There's only so much market for, there's only so much square footage that can go around annually. The amount of square footage in this far exceeds the annual absorption or consumption, or annual absorption.
Certain uses,
Yes,
like office.
correct.
Yeah.
We still got
I'm going to guess, but I think Jane's point is the absorption rates for the things that are planned, she may not agree with the things that are planned.
That's right.
All right, so make those comments, that's fine. All right, I think we should move on. Are there any ideas for future agenda items we want to suggest? And Jeff and I will work to schedule them.
Focus area 5.
Focus Area 5 comes back, okay, yep. And anybody else have agenda items? You can submit these anytime.
What area is that?
Yeah.
No,
And Lydia, you have a
not an item, but it's something
All right.
that came to mind. I'd like to know when we are expecting a draft back from the Park Service on the study.
You know, Jeff, Lydia and I were talking about this a couple of weeks ago. In Natalie's absence now, we need to figure out how we're going to quarterback that.
But give me,
Yeah, we can get that.
I had the feeling it was not till August or September, but
I think it entered June.
okay, you may be right. Okay. So if you have future agenda items, pass them on to Jeff and myself in the future. Is there any other work session business?
Yeah, I would like you and I to set up a meeting with Jeff, with the new regional director.
DOT, yeah. Yeah. I think
Because we
Jeff's
got-
working on that.
Good timing, we got a TARPO meeting this Thursday, maybe with them.
Yeah.
Our new DOT man in the engineering part, right? We need to
Yeah,
talk.
I'll share, this kind of dovetails or overlays with it. DOT recently reached out to us to try to coordinate at the staff level a reinitiation of a discussion of what to do with the traffic circle. So I'm guessing that the new division engineer will be part of that discussion as well. And I don't know if one should go before the other or not, but
I think we ought to try to meet him before that discussion if that's possible.
yeah.
So let's try to work on that. If the meeting comes up before it, well, then that is. But I think it'd be nice to know him a little bit before a big discussion like that about the
Has
traffic. circle.
anybody met him? I heard he's a great guy and one of the rock stars of Department of Transportation. Has anybody met him? No?
What does that mean exactly?
It's just, we had a good guy heading our region, Brandon, and I heard this gentleman that replaced him is a really good guy. That's all I was
What do you
trying to
mean
say.
good? Good in what direction?
personable.
Well, I thought it meant his job.
Thanks.
That's what I thought it meant. I thought it meant good at his job. I don't think,
Competent.
I mean,
Yeah.
is he aggressive about putting in a lot more roads, or not
I don't-
aggressive about putting in a lot more roads, or?
I'm going to retract everything I said.
We'll make our own
Some
judgment.
folks
when
are
we meet
easier
him.
to work with than others. That's what I mean by a good guy.
He was good to work with, I'm sure.
Okay.
May I ask one more question, if possible? Update on filling the other assistant manager position.
Closed at 5 o'clock today. As of earlier today, I think I had heard we had 84 applications. We are in the process of whittling that down. We're going to send out, once we get it down to a smaller list, we're going to send out a series of questions that we're going to ask them to provide written responses back on, and then we'll evaluate that and narrow it down further for interviews.
Were you expecting that many?
Surprised by that.
This is for assistant manager position, Jeff, is that correct? I didn't hear that earlier. And I believe, Darren has left, but I believe there's some candidates under consideration in the planning department too. Is that correct?
For the planning department?
For the planning department.
Everybody except for the new transportation planner position has been hired in the planning department.
Really?
So we'll be meeting some new people in the very near future.
2 of them are internal candidates,
Okay.
and 1 is external, and we expect her to begin work in about 14 days, if I recall correctly.
Is that transportation planner position advertised now?
It is.
Yeah.
Okay. That's helpful information. Thank you for the updates. Is there a motion to recess the work session and enter a closed session, please?
I move to recess the work session and enter into a closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A5 to establish or to instruct the public body staff or negotiating agents concerning the position to be taken by or on behalf of the public body in negotiating the price and other material terms of a contract or proposed contract for the acquisition of real property by purchase, option, exchange, or lease.
There's a motion by Lydia Bosch. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jane Hogaman. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries, and we're now in a closed meeting. We'll take a few minutes to prepare for that.
Okay, and are we stopped recording?